Oh, the courts closed that.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome. Good morning, everybody. Probably half of you didn't go to shul today, like myself, because of the snow. So I'll talk about tefillah to make up for not going to minyan. Maybe some of you did already. So ask almost anybody. I want just a little participation in the beginning, just till people sign in. Ask almost anybody, is there an obligation to daven? And what will they tell you? You know, as a Jew.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone knows. Now, is the obligation d'oraita or d'Rabbanan?
Machloket.
Exactly. You can't go wrong with that answer. No? Okay. Tell me, what's the classic machloket between who and who?
Ramban, Rambam.
Okay, that's a classic. Rambam, remember, here's what everyone says. Rambam holds it's every day, right? And Ramban holds only when you're in trouble. Correct? That's what everyone learned in school. Now, for something to be a chiyuv d'oraita, let's both agree that there's a chiyuv d'oraita, there's a biblical obligation to pray, but there's an argument how often that obligation or when that obligation applies. Is it every day or is it only when you're in trouble? And the cute people like to say they really don't disagree. They don't agree over the obligation to pray. They only disagree whether everyone is always in trouble. Where whenever you're in trouble, you're obligated to pray. Simply the Rambam holds you're always in trouble whether you know it or not. That's the sort of in jest they say that, or something maybe even seriously. So that I'm assuming a second. Okay, that I'm assuming we're all familiar with. What I wanted to add. Wait, make sure I'm a co-host, right? I am a co-host. Okay, perfect. What I wanted to add is for something to be a chiyuv d'oraita, what do I need? What makes something a biblical obligation?
In the Torah.
I need a pasuk. I need a verse in the Bible. I need a pasuk in the Torah. Correct? Now, in the Ten Commandments we read last week, it doesn't say anywhere thou shalt pray. Correct?
Right.
Nor in Parshat. No, anywhere. I don't remember any pasuk anywhere that says you know that you're obligated to pray. Then I'm pretty sure, right? It doesn't say thou shalt daven because Chumash doesn't know Yiddish. It doesn't say thou shalt daven. It doesn't say atem chayvim. It never says that. But the rabbis are sure that there's a biblical obligation because certain obligations. Put it this way: I'll give you. Let me give you a quick example, which is based on last week's parsha. Is there a biblical obligation to have children? Okay.
Fruitful multiple.
Is it a commandment?
Yeah.
Or a blessing?
Commandment.
Put it this way.
Commandment. It's a
Okay. Who's obligated?
Man. Just a man.
All human beings?
No, just men.
No. I'm saying just the Jewish people, or even non-Jews.
Just Jewish people?
All Jewish people. Is Puruvu someone for all humankind, or just the Jewish people?
All humankind.
Why would you think that?
Because it says in Bereshit.
Where in Bereshit does it say Puruvu?
Because there were no Jews at the time of Bereshit.
But it's Odom Rishon.
So is it one of the 7 Noachai laws?
No.
No.
It's not one. Otherwise it'd be 8.
Yeah.
And otherwise we probably would have all died by starvation by now if everyone was commanded to have children. Maybe. Just joking. But first now, so where does it say then after Matan Torah that we're chayav to have children? You're right, it doesn't. But the rabbis, what do the rabbis say? The rabbis say that we're obligated to have children. Puruvu applies to us and not to non-Jews. It's a Gemara. It's in the Second Sanhedrin, Daf Nun Chet. It's because of Noah. Why? Because where in Chumash does it say Puruvu?
Bereshit.
Where in Bereshit?
It says it twice, once to Adam and once to Noah.
How about the fish?
The Parshat Bereshit is supposed to be a bracha. The Parshat Noah is supposed to be a mitzvah.
Oh, so let's take a look if you're correct. Let's take a quick look. And you'll see why we're doing this in a minute. Let's open up here. You said Parshat Bereshit. So let's open up Sefer Bereshit. Sorry about that. Let's open up Bereshit. Where are we? Bereshit, Perek Aleph. Here we go. On day 5, what does God say? God makes the fish and the fowl. Vayvarech otam Elohim lemor puravu milot etamayim. Yamin. Both Yerabarat. So the fish are not commanded, but they're blessed to have puravu. And when you get to man in day 6, what happens? The exact same wording. Vayvarech otam Elohim vayomer lehem Elohim puravu milot haaretz. So the blessing, you can't say it's a blessing for animals and a commandment for man. It's a blessing for man. But you're saying that's Bereshit, it's a blessing. Then you said Parshat Noach, that's Perek Tet. You said this is a commandment? Well, this is right after the flood. And who's God talking to? Does that look like a bracha also? That's a blessing.
Yeah, yes.
It's no different. And if you know the story of the flood, it's the story of recreation. So it makes sense. Remember, God said, Menachem v'titchem here says, Menachem v'titchem back then was Reduba v'kivshu. It's very similar. And if this is a commandment, God's talking to Noach here, isn't he?
Yeah.
So how do the rabbis have the chutzpah to say that this is a commandment for the Jewish people? So if you look carefully, the commandment, the pasuk that the rabbis quote that only Am Yisrael is commanded is not from pasuk Aleph. It's from pasuk Zayin. Batem prurvu, sure. See this pasuk Zayin? Batem prurvu, shirtzu bar tzurvuba. In chapter 9, in Perek Tet pasuk Zayin. Now, there's no doubt that this is the source of the 7 Noachai laws. Take a look, because what's next? The next line is Ever Menachem is over here, and then we have what do you call it? Shvichut Davim Shavech Dam Adam. And here God is clearly talking to Noach and his sons. These 7 psukim is the source of the 7 Noachai laws. No doubt about it. But the rabbis say that no, the Purvu is not one of the 7 Noachai laws. It's only an Am Yisrael, and who's commanded? Only we are. Based not based on pasuk Aleph, based on pasuk Zayin. Patem Purvu. Because that's in command form already. And the rabbis read this midrashically beautifully. What do they say? I'm going to show you something really cute. I'll show you how the rabbis read this pasuk. And then they'll take a start topic. Quotation mark right here. Agree? Quotation mark. Where do I close this quotation mark? In Pshat, I close a quotation mark over here, don't I? And then God talks again to Noach about the Brit. But the rabbis read it differently. The rabbis say the first quotation mark is here, and this is the second quotation mark. Here, God finishes talking to Adam and Noach, and this pasuk is Chumash talking to Am Yisrael, or God talking to the reader of Chumash, to Am Yisrael Har Sinai. Got it? This was God talking to Noach. Vatem, you standing here at Har Sinai, or you standing and listening, reading Chumash, you have to have children. Understand how the rabbis read this midrashically? They say this is God talking to Noach and his sons still here. It's a blessing. This is a little clause at the end. But temporal, God's talking to Am Yisrael here. Now, here's my claim. What I want to claim is that some things, the obligation is based on common sense, on logic, and then the rabbis have to go find a pasuk. I'm going to use this for davening as well. Let me explain what I mean. I want to claim that, let me turn this, I can undo my share now. What I want to claim is as follows, is that because we say Nasa v'nishmat Har Sinai, actually that was last week and this week, but because we as a people enter a Brit Olam, an eternal Brit to be God's people forever. Remember, Batem Tulim Mamlechet Konei B'Goy Kadosh. Am Yisrael is a nation, not as individuals, as a nation, take upon ourselves to serve God forever. It's called a Brit Olam. It's an eternal Brit. Part of being Jewish is not only you being Jewish, you have an obligation to pass down to pass down that tradition from one generation to the next. We see that over and over again. Remember by Avram, ki dativ l'manashir tzabanav b'toach harav dot. Parkim and Tilim. Remember Tilim Ayin Chet. We have to teach the story. We have to learn from our parents and teach it to our children. Right? Kibud Horim in the Ten Commandments is honoring tradition, meaning in order to keep Am Yisrael, in order to fulfill the commitment to be God's people forever, we're obligated, based on logic, to have children and educate them and teach them Torah. Okay? So logically, it makes sense to be a chiyuv d'oraita because it's central to our covenant. Now go find me a pasuk. Understand my point? Now, what pasuk did the rabbis pick? The pasuk they picked from Noach is awesome because it's in command form. There's no reason. Let's go back to what we had before. There's no reason to repeat this unless you believe in chiasms. But there's no reason to repeat it. God just said it before, and therefore this is a great place to midrashically say that we're obligated. Got it? Now, the best proof of this, because there's a really strange word in this pasuk. See the word shirtzu ba'aretz? We didn't have that in any other command or plural. We had it in the creation, but where do we have almost the exact same wording?
At the beginning of Shemot.
At the beginning of Shemot, what do we have? We have Uvnei Yisrael, Paru, Vayishritzu, Vayibu, V'yasmu b'mod v'timatz. Here we have we're fulfilling that. So I think it's a for our share. My claim is logically there's a need to have children based on Brit Sinai. Got it? Now I have to find a pasuk to make it yoraita, but logically I'll give you one other example. If you know the Rambam, is there a mitzvah to say not to speak lashon hara? There's a lot to say, but is there a mitzvah to say to remember not to speak lashon hara? So the Ramban says there is. What pasuk does he quote? Remember what God did to Miriam. Remember in Sefer Parshat Kitiva, Zachor, remember what God did to Miriam? Ramban and his commentary says that this is a mitzvah to say to remember not to speak lashon hara. And you know what his proof is? His proof is how can it not be? He says, it's so important not to speak lashon hara. It's so central to Judaism. How can it not be a mitzvah? And he says, if I didn't have this pasuk, I would find you another one. See what I'm getting at? What I'm trying to show you is that when the rabbis count mitzvot, certain mitzvot are so basic to Judaism, they have to be a commandment. No, go find me a pasuk. And now that takes us to our topic. Because everyone holds you're obligated to pray. Of course, because how can you not be obligated to pray? It's a reflection of your belief in God. If you don't believe that there's hashkacha, if you don't believe that God not only created, but he's also in control of his creation, and he can affect what happens down on earth. He can affect, he's behind the weather and politics. That God has God reacts to man's behavior and can punish and can reward. But God oversees his creation, and there's schar v'onesh. If you really believe that, then praying to God for certain things is a reflection of that belief. So if you wouldn't pray to God, that's not turning to God when you're in trouble. It's sort of not believing that God could do anything about it. So that's so what I want to show you now. I want to show you. We'll see in Parshat Mishpatim where the rabbis, especially the Rambam, Maimonides, learned tefillah from. Okay, that's my introduction, and now we're going to have a shir on Parshat Mishpatim. I need to do a shir on Parshat Mishpatim. The last 15 minutes we'll get to davening, but I want to show you the pasuk. And anyone knows what pasuk the Rambam quotes for the chiyuv to daven? That probably no one remembers. Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's in Parshat Mishpatim, but obligation to pray is in Parshat Mishpatim. But people don't realize it. But most of you thought it was from the Shema, right? Something like that. That's what they taught you in school. But we'll see the Rambam, and if it makes sense, we'll see the Ramban also. But I want to show you, nowhere in Chumash does it ever say, thou shalt daven, or you must daven, but rather, I think it's almost implicit logically that there has to be an obligation. And the rabbis will they have to find a pasuk. I want to try and share with you the logic of what pasuk the Rambam picked. Okay. So now, that was my introduction. Who's ever online, I guess, is online by now. And now we're going to get to work and have a little class on Parshat Mishpatim, and then we'll get to davening. So Parshat Mishpatim starts in Parshat Yitro. You know that? No, if I was dividing the Parsha logically, Yitro is pretty short anyhow. But let me show you what I mean. Let's open up my screen and our source sheet, which I shared with you. Okay. Remember Lo Tachmod, the last of the 10 Commandments? Remember the last one? So I have one little joke I'll share with you. Believing in God, not saying God's name in vain, keeping Shabbat, not to kill. Everyone can buy that. When the people heard Lo Tachmod, that's when they all get scared. I'm just joking. But right after Lo Tachmod, all of a sudden the people get scared. And they start standing a distance. But seriously, and if they heard the 10 commandments, the 10 statements that he wrote from God in some direct or indirect manner, but they're standing at Har Sinai, the people seeing all the kolot and lapidim, all the sound and the fire and everything, they get scared and they stand at a distance and they tell Moshe the following: we want you to speak to us. We don't want God to speak to us anymore. Moshe tells them, don't be afraid. It's okay. Fear is good, but the people don't buy it. The people stand from a distance. Got it? And Moshe goes into that Raphel where God is. Now, I know some Parshanim, in fact, many Parshanim claim that this story happened between Commandment 2 and 3, which is fine. But the parallel story in Dvarim for sure happened after the Dibrot. So whether this happened here or the parallel story in Dvarim happened here, I don't want to get into that argument. But bottom line, after the 10 Commandments, God no longer speaks directly to the people. Instead, as the people ask for, God is going to speak through Moshe. Now listen carefully. Pasuk Yitchet. We read this. This was Maftir in Parshat Yitro. Vayomer Hashem and Moshe. Kol Tamara b'nei Israel. God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go tell the following laws to the Jewish people, beginning with, you saw they spoke to you from heaven. Don't make out of me gods of gold and silver. I don't need fancy gold and silver things. Instead, keep it simple. Build me a Mizbeach Adamah. I'm happy with a nice earth and Mizbeach. It's really large, we can make it Havanim. What I'm getting at, we have a set of laws that begin in Parshat Mishpatim, and it continues. Now, let me show you where it continues to. Remember I put that little quotation mark like we did before? I'll take the same methodology here. If I open up Parshat Mishpatim, it's Parachaf, right? In Parachaf, right over here, here. God spoke to Moshe and says, go tell this to Bnei Yisrael. God starts speaking here. I want to know where God finishes speaking to Moshe. It's God speaking to Moshe and telling him, tell these laws to Bnei Yisrael. So it starts over here. But Parshat Mishpatim is a continuation. Right? God is still talking to Moshe Rabbeinu and saying, tell these laws to the Jewish people. And we have all Parachav Aleph, all these Mishpatim. I'm just going to glance through all Parshat Mishpatim quickly. We begin with the laws of Eved Ivri, of a Jewish slave or servant. And then we have laws of assault, what we call Masechet Nezikin, or damages. And the key word is what do you call it? It's always key. V'chi rivun anashim, v'chi yakei shitra'eo, v'chi natsu anashim, v'chi yakeh, v'chi yigach, v'chi yiftach, v'chi yigol, v'chi yignov. It's called case law. All chapter, there's this one continuum of laws, a whole set of case laws. Ki aver ish tevecherem, ki tetzei shematzah kotzim, ki tevreu shomrim, eo v'chi shal ish mimreo shoel, ki fateh ish onesim fatem. But all chapter 21, chapter 22 are case laws followed by how much the person who was injured or what damage was caused to, how much the person causing the damage has to pay them. But it's classic laws for Beit Din or Nezikin, and basically it's, if you ever learned Bava Kama, it's all Masechet Nezikin deals with these topics. But again, it's a whole set of laws, but it continues. Then we have another quick law about serving another god. You can't serve another god. And then we get a set of laws that are not absolute, they're not case law, but rather they're absolute. Don't oppress or don't cheat a stranger or oppress them. Why? Because you were strangers in Egypt. Don't treat an orphan or a widow. And Beit Din doesn't punish, but rather God will get angry at you. And same thing, you should lend money. Remember, but when you lend money, you can't take interest. And if you take collateral and something someone needs, give it back to them. If they need it for sleeping or for clothing. If they cry out, God will hear. I call this echoes of the Exodus. It's not our topic today, but all through Parshat Mishpatim, we have echoes of Yitzet Mitzrayim. Got it? Echoes of the Exodus. We have like members of the laws of Eved Ivri. You were a slave. If you oppress somebody, I'll cry and I'll hear their cry. We had that before also. Remember how the story of Mitzrayim began? We were enslaved and we cried out and God heard our cry and came and redeemed us. So now that we become a nation, we have to take what happened to us and redeem that. But what I'm getting at is that there's more and more laws. They continue in Parshat Bet, but in the second half of Parshat Bet, the laws are no longer case law. Should this happen? But rather they're absolute law. Don't do it. Like, don't curse the judge. I'll follow the simple explanation, or a political leader. Okay, and pay your taxes on time, etc. And then it continues in Parshat Gimel with laws for baiting, not to play favorites, and returning lost items, and midvar sheker terchak. Okay, there's a whole set of moral laws. Again, not to oppress a stranger. You know what it feels like to be a stranger. And then we have laws of Shemitah, 6 years in year 7. We have laws of Shabbat. And then keep everything I just told you. Got it? We'll get back to this possible. And then we end with Shalosh Regalim. And we end with Losh Vagdal. No, it's the law section. What I'm getting at is the law section that began right after the Ten Commandments at the end of Parshat Yitro. People don't want to hear from God anymore and want to hear from Moshe. So God tells Moshe, okay. And then God tells Moshe 3 chapters of laws to tell the Jewish people. The end of chapter 20, got it? All chapters 21, 22, and half of chapter 23. But God didn't finish talking yet. There's more things that Am Yisrael needs to know. They know God's going to send a malach to lead them, to bring them to the land of Israel, the place that God got ready. And he warns them, make sure, listen to this malach. If you listen to him, I'll reward you. If you don't listen, I'll punish you. And he goes on promising, I'll help you conquer the land. When you go there, get rid of the idol worship, serve me instead. And lots of promises about how good life will be in the land of Israel, not to make covenants with others. And that's the end of that's basically 3 chapters, primarily of laws, followed by a promise about a conditional promise that I'll help you conquer the land of Israel if you keep my laws. Now, so far this has nothing to do with davening, correct? But what I want to share with you is these laws, it's not all 613. It's more than 10 and less than 613. Agreed? Now, the question is, why specifically are these laws come part and parcel with the 10 Commandments? I'll repeat that question to make sure it's clear. The 10 Commandments is a type of a contract. I understand that they have a special setting. We hear them together, a big national gathering. There's lots more mitzvot that Am Yisrael has to study. For some reason, God picks a specific set of laws, which we call Parshat Mishpatim, which I call the Kol Tamar unit, the unit we just identified. And those laws are given together with the 10 Commandments. All the other laws are given on the first 40 days, second 40 days in the desert. But there's lots more laws to come. But there's a special set of laws that comes part and parcel with the 10 Commandments. In fact, some Parshanim say, have we not gotten scared? We would have heard Parshat Mishpatim from God directly. It could be that's a big machloket, but what I'm getting at is that even though there's lots of laws to follow, one specific set of laws, the laws on Parshat Mishpatim, these 3 chapters, come together with the 10 Commandments, which means there must be something fundamental about them. Now, before I take a look at it, I want to share with you something I learned from someone who's a CEO somewhere, or I forgot what he does, but he counsels companies about being more efficient. So he says, there's 2 types of things people do. There's what's urgent and there's what's important. You ever heard this before? It's like really eye-opening. It says like this: certain things you do are urgent, right? Certain things you do are important. Like I have to make coffee. That's urgent. Agreed? But it's not important. Prepare shir might be important. But what happens, I spend more time making coffee than preparing shir. Or let's just give an example. So the point is, people spend too much time doing what's urgent and don't spend enough time doing what's important. And therefore, when you balance your time, you have to know when to cut down the urgency. If you turn this to Yeshiva Bachrim, right? There's a demonstration against, some terrible thing going on. There's the need in the development town for volunteers. There's tons of urgent things that have to be done right away. But you also have to sit and learn and become a Talmid Chacham. You have to learn and go to college. So when you're growing up, when you're in college age, high school, college age, there's lots of things that are urgent. But even though they're urgent, more important is there's also things that are important that aren't so urgent. But if you spend your day doing what's urgent, you'll never do what's important. Got it? So just for the sake of analogy. So in counseling, you have to tell people to make sure to balance between what's urgent and what's important. You have to define what's important and make sure you schedule enough time, and what's urgent, make sure it's not so urgent, whatever it is. Got the idea? Now, why did I use that analogy? In that analogy, the laws that we're getting right now, are they going to be the most urgent laws because we just became God's people and we're in the desert? Are they laws that we need to know immediately in the desert? Or are they the most important laws? Understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
No, I'm getting a set of laws that must be, there's something important about them because they come with the 10 commandments. They're given first. Are they the most urgent laws or the most important laws? Got my point?
Important.
Yeah, okay. So now we have to do that. Let's analyze them and see what we get. Are they urgent or are they important? Got it? So now we go back to my share screen, and here's what we're going to do. No, that was the wrong one. Here we go. That's it. So we did this. Okay, so what do we find? I call it a black box analogy. Understand my point? There's a black box. I identified what's inside. Okay, so it's a set of laws. What category of laws? It'll be between God and man, between man and man. Okay, is there only laws or are there promises? We'll see. Are they urgent, most important? So we open up a commission. We took a look, and then we talk about echoes of the Exodus inside. We just mentioned that on the side. Okay. Now, if I look at the laws, so the first set of laws, I'm just reviewing what we saw already inside. It began with laws how to serve God properly. It was, don't serve me with gold and silver. Got it? Instead, make a simple altar. A mizbeach is enough. Keep it simple. Now, then we have a whole set of laws between man and his fellow man, benam l'chavero, and look at the progression. How to treat a Jewish slave. Again, echoes of the Exodus. One person injuring another person by assault. That's called adam hamazik. If you know your Baba Kama, that's a person, an individual causing damage. Okay. Then a person's property causing damage to another person. That's I can hit someone and cause damage to him, or my animal. Remember, it's called shore.
Sure.
If you know, remember Avot Nasikim. My animal can cause, or Karen, no, my animal can cause damage to another person or to his property. My property can hurt other property. I can do something like opening up a hole in the public domain, and someone can fall inside. I'm responsible. Right? I can also start a fire, things like that, and I can legally start a fire in my property. But if I'm not careful, it spreads. I'm responsible. I can cause damage by stealing something from somebody else. I can cause financial damage without assault, without anything physical. I can steal, so I have to pay double, triple, sometimes 4 times or 5 times. Okay, all those laws come up. And then my property causing or my animal can eat someone else's field, or I can start a fire. I can cause damage by not being careful watching something. Remember Shomer Sachar, Shomer Chinam. Okay, this is all classic stuff. And then the most interesting example, and I will use that as a to sort of understand all the other ones. If there's not a case of rape, but a date that went too far. Let's say someone went out with somebody and it went too far, and really he should marry her now, but he decides not to marry her. Remember that story on Fateh? Therefore, if he decides not to marry her, what happens? So she's not legally married. She can marry somebody else, but her value in the shidduch market just went down like crazy. So who lost out? Her father now, who could have gotten 100 shekel for the shidduch, now can only get 50 shekel. You follow? So therefore, my action in dating, caused financial damage to her father. Now, we don't learn from here that women are treated like property. Got my point? Because the topic here isn't women's rights and how we treat women. That's a different topic. The topic here is what? When a person does something and causes financial damage to another person, even if it's direct, he's responsible. I think this is the greatest example of indirect. Everyone agrees if I punch someone in the face, I have to pay the damages. If I break something of his, if I borrow something and break it, if I'm supposed to watch something and not careful, if I steal something, everyone agrees that that's responsible. Here, it's a very indirect responsibility. But the underlying principle, in fact, the rabbis don't paskan halacha from these cases. They derive from these cases principles called zikin, an opposite principle, and then they paskan halacha based on those principles. See what happens? From all these cases here, this is all case law. Chapter 21 and the first half of chapter 22, it's all case law called Mishpat Mutneh. No, should this happen? It's called the key word inside. Should this happen? Here's the punishment. So each of these cases, the rabbis study the case and drive a principle. Remember Karen, Shane, remember and then why do we need the 4 different principles called Avot Nezikin? And then they match them all together. And then when any new case comes up, I don't look in Chumash, oh, where's the same case? I look in Chumash, what's the principle? And then I apply the principle to the new case. Got it? The rest, learn Masechet Nezikin, basically, or Seder Nezikin. It's all the